This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to a Thursday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. We got a packed show today. We are going to talk Cup Final. I imagine the PLD trade is going to come up a few times on the program as well. And I got to tell you, for soccer fans here in Canada, we got a massive, massive tilt tonight. The opening of the Copa America, and Canada is taking on Lionel Messi and Argentina. That game is live on TSN tonight at 7 p.m. And my old pal Steven Sandor, longtime soccer writer, covering Canada's national teams and the world of the beautiful game, is going to join us towards the end of the program to tee up tonight, Canada taking on Lionel Messi. But we got to get to the latest on the Bombers and Brady Oliveira's availability for tomorrow night's game against the British Columbia Lions. The depth chart has been released. We'll fill you in on that. The Cup Final as it comes back to Edmonton, and a crazy win for the Seabears last night, and oh my God, did they need it. So that's all coming up. Brandon Rewucki's going to jump on, Scott BIlleck. We have a great conversation with Craig Button coming up. I was planning on mostly talking draft with Craig, but as you'll see coming up, we're going to get into that Dubois trade and the Markstrom trade from yesterday. And get Craig's thoughts on Edmonton and Florida coming back to oil country for Game 6 tomorrow night. So should be a good one. Welcome to everyone listening on podcast. Thanks so much for making us a part of your day. And shout out to the gang with us in the WST chat as always. Just before we bring in Michael Remis, want to remind everybody that if you missed it yesterday, the new edition of CFL 110 is up on the Winnipeg Sports Talk YouTube channel and available in your podcast feed. Jeff Hamilton and I, each and every week, will take you on a full tour of the CFL. And it's not as bright in Winnipeg as it is elsewhere, but that is up there, of course, CFL 110, brought to you by Garage Living Winnipeg, 204-999-1234. Also want to thank our other sponsors, including Coolbet Canada, the great people at Princess Auto, Rolly's Transfer, Consolidated Supply, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club, F Apparel, Wallace & Wallace, Little Brown Jug, the beer can. What a gorgeous day to get to the beer can. I'm thinking on maybe picking up Dustin Nielsen, who's in town for the game tomorrow, going for a couple at the beer can, and then heading to the ball game later on, and then maybe to the King's Head for a little bit of this Canada-Argentine game tonight. I think that sounds like a pretty good spot. Of course, Royal Sports, big goalie event on Saturday at the Hockey for All Center. Boston Pizza, the Winnipeg Gold Eyes, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodges, Assiniboia Downs, Breezy Bend with our daily Breezy Bend golf updates. And we'll get to a why not question of the day for the good people over at Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Let's get this party started and welcome in Michael Remis to the program. Reem, what's going on?
Hey, I'm in a good mood. It's summer. It's a gorgeous day out, and we were blessed with a couple off-season trades yesterday. One of them involving maybe the most talked about player in the history of the channel, or the person that's given us the most views. So the gifts just keep on coming here with the trades. And yeah, Stanley Cup Final, we could see history happen Friday. Also the Bombers looking for redemption, and you mentioned the Seabears with an epic comeback yesterday. And yeah, we're also counting down to the NHL draft. We will be there in Vegas next week. So a lot to be smiling about here on a Thursday.
Yeah, and as I said, we'll talk draft with Button. But as you mentioned, Winnipeg Sports Talk in Vegas at the draft, presented by Coolbet, live beginning on Wednesday and taking you Wednesday, Thursday, Friday into that evening's selections. We'll see whether the Jets find a way to get back into the first round. If not, their first pick is going to be on Saturday, and we'll have more bonus content brought to you by Coolbet throughout the week, as well as Saturday when the Jets are scheduled to make their selections in Vegas at the NHL draft. But Reem, I mean, you mentioned PLD. I was talking about CFL 110, and Ishaboy Bruce, amongst others, mentioned this is PLD 365. I have to laugh just at, what that trade announcement did to spike the show yesterday, because for better or worse, PLD, over the course of the history of Winnipeg Sports Talk, I don't think there's any doubt if we did a power poll on topics that have moved the needle and brought people in and had people talking in chat and people talking to us about it, it's Pierre-Luc Dubois. And Dubois will be linked with this team and this city for a long time. Of course, they traded Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic to get him here. And then Kevin Cheveldayoff, Chevy must be sitting back kind of doing a little chuckle under his breath right now, because the job Chevy did in manufacturing a return for a player who pretty much dictated where he wanted to go looks even better today than it did less than a year ago when they pulled the trigger on that deal in Nashville, now that Dubois is a Washington Capital in exchange for 3 years of Darcy Kemper at 5 or plus $1 million a season.
Yeah, a huge topic here. What was it, 2 years ago, when that day there was a report of him being at the draft, wanting to be traded. He went with his bank. That was one of our biggest live shows. Last year, the day he got traded was the first time we hit 1,000. And the video with the most views I've ever posted on here was you and Brian Hayes talking about I just put the thumbnail as buyer's remorse, and I got 30,000 views. So a lot of, we saw a notable spike. People came here saying, hey, I just heard about the trade. I'm here. And I think a lot of people invested in Dubois. Laine still, I think, is a fan favorite here. This was the guy they traded Laine for, but also just didn't work out here. And as you mentioned, he said he wanted to go to LA. He kind of didn't hold all the cards, but he dictated that he was an RFA. He said he wasn't going to sign. And they traded him to a destination he wanted, and less than a year later, he's off to another destination in Washington. I don't know what it is, but this, you can't stop talking about this guy. And I was listening to Dennis Bernstein's podcast with the mayor, John Hoven. They said they were the happiest that they don't have to answer any more questions about PLD anymore. So even there, they were sick of it. They were talking about him a lot, and we're still talking about he's 2 teams removed from the Jets. But I think you're at the point where it's okay, you're a year removed from the trade, saying, okay, well, this really, really worked out for the Jets. Gabe Villard, hopefully he can have a healthy year, but Follow had a productive season, and everyone's posting in our comments now, oh, I can't wait to see what this second round pick from, Montreal's pick from LA is going to be this upcoming draft. So,
well, and just speaking of the draft, I mean, thank God they got that pick. And listen, I think it gave them the opportunity to, be aggressive as they were last year, trading their first rounder to get Sean Monahan, who, I mean, obviously the playoffs didn't go the way that they had hoped for and planned for, but when you look back at last season as to how the team was playing, where they were lacking, what they needed, Sean Monahan was that dude. And I mean, he came in, he completely turned around the power play for a good period of time and gave the Winnipeg Jets, another solid centerman in the middle that could win faceoffs and do a number of things that the Winnipeg Jets needed. And he was a big part of that late run that, got them finishing 4th overall in the National Hockey League before meeting their match with the Colorado Avalanche. I'm really intrigued as to what the Winnipeg Jets might be doing and might be up to when it comes to next week. And I mean, part of that is the fact that we've seen Nikolai Ehlers' name on a number of trade boards, and certainly it's been reported widely that at this point, the Ehlers camp not really thinking about an extension. But then we've also heard from Scott Arniel, the new head coach, about how important Ehlers is to the team. The quote was, "I want him, I need him." And will his situation be different when he comes to camp under a new head coach? Will he even get to that point? But I think it's the blue line, the potential loss of Dylan DeMello and Brendan Dillon. And if that is the case, if nothing happens with either of those players beforehand, do the Jets try to add to the blue line at the draft before free agency? Or is it a matter of trying to get guys to come to Winnipeg on free agent deals as unrestricted free agents, which has traditionally been, a challenge for markets like Winnipeg? So we'll be all over it next week. But right now, the talk around the hockey world is on two things. The trades yesterday between LA and Washington and Calgary, New Jersey, with Markstrom going to Jersey. And, of course, on the Stanley Cup Final, which we will get to in more detail tomorrow, as, of course, the puck will drop. That's going to be the hardest thing, Remis, and I think we might set a record for bandwidth downloaded for live sports on phones at a Bomber game tomorrow, because I sure as hell don't want to miss being in the stadium for the Bombers-Lions. I also don't want to miss keeping tabs on what's happening between the Oilers and the Panthers. And we're pretty much going to have to double dip and have the phones out tomorrow at the football game.
It's going to be hard not to follow. I think, maybe the first two periods you can just kind of keep a close eye on it. I'll be watching, the Bomber game, of course. But as the third period goes and they start bringing the cup out or maybe putting it away, you'll want to see what happens. I mean, the third periods have been so exciting. And last game, Florida with chance after chance. Remind me a lot of Edmonton just hanging on against Dallas. But Edmonton has played so well, especially the last couple games. They seem to have all the momentum here. And we're just waiting for this to go back to Florida for 7. But they actually have to play. And we'll wait and see. I'm curious if, we don't see it that often. If Florida does win McDavid winning the Conn Smythe, I think it's
over. The Conn Smythe is over.
That's got to happen, right? He set all these records. Like, what are we doing here if he doesn't? But also, you could see Paul Maurice lifting the Stanley Cup. I know Mike McIntyre went to Edmonton to watch it in person. He's there. So, it's a lot of former Winnipeg Jets in the news here. With the Cup Final, but also with the Dubois trade.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. I mean, as far as the Cup Final goes, and we'll dive into this a little bit with Button and get Brandon's thoughts on it when he joins us just in a few minutes. I mean, I'm seeing Dan Asham, Oilers in 7, Huss, Comet, Panthers may blow this. This is very much a series right now. Mike Rupp on NHL Network said before Game 5 that the winner of Game 5 wins the Stanley Cup. Now, that's a hot take for sure. And there's still 2 games to play and 2 opportunities for Florida to win. But man, I mean, when you think about, the conversations that we had and pretty much everybody had after Game 3, where the Panthers went up 3-0, it certainly didn't look like the Oilers had it in them to get off the mat. But right now, I mean, they basically are looking full Undertaker mode, to be honest. And, they're a favorite in this game tomorrow. And if they can get this done, I mean, man, Monday is going to be wild. Kicking off just a bizarre week in the National Hockey League where you could be giving out the Stanley Cup on Monday night and then making picks in the first round on Friday with Connor Hellebuck and the other top nominees for trophies like a Connor McDavid later on that week. I mean, I guess let's just say the Oilers came back to win on Monday night in Florida. They would travel back potentially after the game, or maybe they'd let the guys go party in Miami for a little bit and then come back on Tuesday. I would think you'd have to have the parade on Wednesday, because McDavid is going to be needed in Vegas on Thursday to pick up a number of trophies.
That's a good point. And what is it? The buyout window starts 48 hours after the cup is handed out. And so if they win Friday, if Florida wins Friday, the buyout window will be Sunday. And then if Edmonton wins Monday, the buyout window Wednesday. And then you have all this tight timeline of the awards Thursday, the parade. I mean, the GMs don't really have much time to breathe here. So I don't know who came up with the schedule for this year, but it seems really dumb to have, no time in between the cup final and official offseason. You're having trade. I think it's great that there's trades and stuff happening, but it just seems less than ideal for everyone. But it is what it is. Maybe they'll rectify it and start the season first week of October instead of second, leading into third. And I think part of it is, the distance between the two teams. They have the extra day in for travel, or they could have just been screw it. Let's just have it, have only one day for travel. But no, they gave them the 2 days, and here we are waiting. And, Edmonton's I don't know if you saw, they have Snoop Dogg was here. Now he's in Edmonton tonight, so they can't practice at their own arena. And I think Florida is traveling. Are they doing the thing where they travel today instead of traveling yesterday?
Geez, Snoop Dogg's in Edmonton tonight with a game tomorrow. As our pal Gregory will tell you, they better get ready to fumigate that arena after the show tonight. So it is suitable for spectators to come in for a National Hockey League game and not a Cheech and Chong convention, which was rumored to be the case with our eyewitness boots on the ground correspondent Gregory from the events here in Winnipeg on Monday. Let's get to the why not question of the day for not Autocorp but Waverly and McGillivray, and we'll get to this Stanley Cup. And has everything that has taken place changed your feeling? I did see Yin Vivian in chat saying, actually, I would love to see Maurice lose after his press conferences. Clown at things. Well, not everyone feels that way. But have the Oilers grown on you, even though they are the Oilers and it feels dirty cheering for them or pulling for them to win? Let us know who you're pulling for right now. Are you pulling for Edmonton to make history with Connor McDavid, or do you want the Florida Panthers just to end this thing, win the damn Stanley Cup, and let's get all 32 teams and all fans off to the offseason? Let us know in chat for today's why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. All right, Remo, we have the depth chart for the Blue Bombers for this game tomorrow. We'll get into this a little bit more with BIlleck. I guess there's some good news in that Brady Oliveira is on the depth chart, albeit behind Johnny Augustine and denoted as a game-time decision. Better than being ruled out, I guess, although he still hasn't practiced, and I think our expectations for Brady, even if he does suit up for the game, need to be limited.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of this. Jeff Hamilton, the guy you do CFL 6 or CFL 110 with. That's a plug right there. He says Brady Oliveira will start as the backup to Johnny Augustine against the Lions. Oliveira says he's good to go. Coach Mike O'Shea is concerned with his lack of practice so far this year and wants to ease him in. Oliveira will play. We'll just have to see how much. So interesting they put him in as the backup. He really hasn't practiced this week, so they're trusting that he's good. I'm not really sure how much to expect from him. I guess that is good news that he's in, better than being ruled out, but maybe they're concerned that he hasn't even practiced. So you're just going to put him in a game and have him go, but better news than him being out again. I think the news that's going to hit them harder is Dietrich Nichols being out. I think that's not great for the defense. BC's got two pretty good receivers, and Hollins and McInnes, they both had big games over the weekend. So I think this BC offense is going to be tough to stop us. But for the Bombers, they haven't scored touchdowns. They don't have a passing touchdown. So you hope they have the run game going to set up the pass here with Oliveira as the backup. running back.
Yeah, I mean, this is a time where Zach Collaros has to, listen, he's got to get this offense going at a much more efficient clip and move the football a little more consistently. Like, they did have some big plays against Ottawa. I mean, the massive one to Wheatcroft. We had the great big play to Dembski, but they weren't able to move the football and the chains as effectively as they has been so far. I mean, we've talked about the defense. I mean, Nahaba out, Miles Fox out. So the defensive line really depleted. There is going to be a much bigger onus on the Blue Bomber offense to make it happen. We'll chop this up with Scott BIlleck a little later on. And again, you can see the full Bombers depth chart up right now at the Bombers site as well as on X. Hey, listen, before we get to Brandon and talk about a bunch of the big stories in hockey, what a crazy, crazy win for the Seabears last night. I mean, with all the turmoil that Winnipeg had been through, you come back home, you are hosting the number one team, the Vancouver Bandits, who only had one loss on the season, and things look really good in the third quarter. You're up 13, feeling good. Who needs Teddy Buckets? And then it seemed the floor just caved in on the Seabears. They ended up getting outscored by 25 from that point until target score began. And we're down 12 once the clock was turned off, heading into target score, and then found their defense, started sinking buckets, and Justin Wright Foreman, the replacement for Teddy Buckets, the hero, bank 3 to win the game, part of his 32. And I can't think of a more relieved group and a more important win for a team in a long time than what the Seabears were able to do last night on home court.
Yeah, they needed to win real bad. I mean, first of all, you come in with a 4-game losing streak, and you just had an event where you cut your MVP from last season. So handing over the keys to JWF, Justin Wright Foreman, 32 points for him, and the game winner. Coach Mike Taylor talked about how they came together with effort on defense. They had allowed us a league average 98.8 points per game. For average, a league high of 98.8 points per game allowed heading into this game, and held Vancouver to only 84 points, as you mentioned, coming back down 12 in target score time and winning a huge win. They needed it. I mean, the Bandits, you mentioned, a top team, one loss. They had a 5-game winning streak heading into this one, but it seemed like everyone was able to contribute into this, and it wasn't just, hey, let's give this guy the ball and let him do his thing while we all stand around. Everyone was playing defense and making plays. So shout out to the Seabears. That's a big win. Big win. They needed it bad, and you got to feel good as this is a bit of a homestand here. They play again Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. Big game on Saturday. Fun. Listen, the Gold Eyes are at home. Looks like a beautiful night for a ball game tonight. Bombers tomorrow. Seabears on Saturday, and the Gold Eyes playing throughout the weekend. So now that it's getting a little nicer outside, a perfect time to get out and take in live sporting action with all of our teams that are playing right now. I mentioned off the top of the show, if you just came in a little bit late, there is a new edition of CFL 110 up, taking you around the Canadian Football League, heading into this week's games. If you haven't already, do us a favor, head on over to YouTube, give it a look, give it a like, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts, search CFL 110 and subscribe there as well for weekly expanded CFL coverage here on the channel from myself and Jeff Hamilton. Of course, CFL 110 is brought to you by our friends at Garage Living Winnipeg. Is your garage a mess? Are you having a tough time opening your car door because of all the clutter? Maybe you can't even park your car in the garage because all the stuff there. Well, I'll tell you what, our friends at Garage Living Winnipeg can help. In just a few days, you can have a beautiful, clean, functional garage that looks amazing and adds value to your home. They specialize in stunning polyaspartic floor coatings, high-end, made-in-Canada metal cabinets, slat wall, and overhead storage solutions. Our pal Pat Kanuga, who you remember for 2 decades on the CBC Morning Show, has left the media and got into what for him is truly a labor of love. He's been a vintage car guy for decades, knows garages, workspaces, and whether it's a 10-car garage mahal or a single-car garage in the back lane, Pat can come up with the design to meet your needs. Give Pat a call, 204-999-1234 for a free in-garage consultation. He'll come by, chop it up with you, and give you some ideas and options for how you can completely revolutionize your garage, your workspace, and as well add some significant value to your home. You can also check them out online at garageliving.com. Garage Living Winnipeg, garages made for living. Again, 999-1234. If you have a move coming up this summer, you got to give our pals at Rolly's Transfer a call. Family owned and operated for over 60 years. Part of the reason why they're the most trusted name in moving in Winnipeg and southern Manitoba. And the Rolly's guys have an extensive logistics business as well, which takes them not only throughout the city, but throughout southern Manitoba on a daily basis. And that means flexible routes, flexible times, and bottom line for you, great prices on your next move. If you do have a move planned, I suggest you get over to Rollies.com. You look up in the top right corner of their beautiful new website. There's a request a quote feature. Let them know when you're moving, what you're moving, and when you're moving, and they'll turn it around, and one of their friendly staff will get in touch with you with a very competitive quote to take as much of the stress out of the moving process for you as possible. For your next move, use Rolly's Transfer, Manitoba's most trusted name in moving services for over 60 years. Find out more and request your quote today at Rollies.com. You know, with all this gorgeous weather, lots happening on your property, I'm sure. And hey, the gang of Consolidated Supply are ready to help you with so many options and solutions for a variety of challenges for you, whether you're residential or commercial. Consolidated Supply are the leaders in irrigation systems, artificial turf, golf carts, both new and used, is the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba, and have other great options for your property, including hot tubs, amazing outdoor kitchens as well. They're now they've got the entire new line of Crest power tools that you're going to want to check out, including that really cool satellite RTK robot mower. And they are the leaders in small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see Consolidated Supply at their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or you can find out more online at cte.ca. And hey, for all of those things you'll be using this weekend, whether they are power tools, whether it's a boat, a Sea-Doo, an ATV, a camper, when you think batteries and unique batteries, Manitoba Battery has you covered. They are the local leaders in batteries, giving Manitobans the best price and the best service at now 2 locations. Logan Avenue, the original, and their new location in the South End on Dover Court Drive. They got a big sale on Power Sport batteries right now. You can check that out at the website or in store. But the bottom line is you'll be shopping local. You'll get the best prices in town, beating the pants off the big box stores, and they'll even deliver those batteries to you for free with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. Manitoba Battery, now with 2 locations. Order online at manitobabattery.com. All right, BIlleck coming up later on. We'll get to some Bomber talk and Jets talk with him. Craig Button coming up, and we're going to have a great conversation with Craig. And we'll also talk about tonight's Canada-Argentina game with Steve Sandor. But right now, we welcome in our old pal from the Big Show and now entertaining you weekly on Skates and Plates. He is a guest that is number 1 in our guest hair power poll, and he's not wearing a hat today, which will make everybody in the chat happy. Brandon Rewucki joins us now. What is up, B? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I rescheduled the hair appointment to yesterday so I could
nice.
I could make it happen for the people. It was a Friday one, but no. I saw the chat last week. No more disappointment. I will say, man, you are looking very fine. That is one hell of a polo right there. I'm jacked. I'm ready to go.
Well, as a World Cup veteran, I spent a few weeks on the mean streets of Doha, Qatar, cheering Canada on in their World Cup. I'm incredibly excited about this tournament. And tonight, I have, and of course we're speaking about Canada, Argentina here for a minute. I have realistic expectations about what we can do against Messi and the defending World Cup champions. But honestly, Peru, Chile, like these games, I don't rule out the opportunity to get a couple nice results and maybe even play past the group stage. But tonight, it's just going to be awesome. Prime time. What a stage, too. Opening game of the tournament against Messi in front of 80,000, probably 97% of them cheering on Argentina. These are the games that you want to be in. And I'll tell you what, if Canada can just play well and show that they've arrived and give Argentina a good game, I think it'll be a huge boost for our soccer program. And Jesse March in his first kind of official matchup outside of friendlies as our new manager of the national team.
Well, and on top of it too, I know it's a big tournament. To call it a walkthrough is, a disservice and not true. But like, this is a massive preparation moment for the club in terms of getting ready for the World Cup in a couple years' time. It won't be in the U.S. obviously, but the atmosphere is going to be similar with the matches taking place wherever they are in Canada in a couple of years. So it's not too far off from that opening World Cup game against Belgium in terms of national importance in this team's soccer history. Any kind of a result, whether it be a draw or, God help us all, a win, would be the biggest result in Canadian soccer history, no doubt about it. I'm jacked. To me, if you're playing Argentina or a team of that ilk in the group stage, you either want them the first game or the third game, right? I think this is a great opportunity for Canada to get Argentina if you're going to have to play them. Let's not forget, Argentina kicked off their World Cup victory with a loss to the Saudis in their opening game back in Doha. So at the very least, there's a little bit of history that the Argentinian team is ripe for the pickings, perhaps in the opening game there. I'll be intrigued to see what Jesse Marsh's group looks like, though, because Argentina's maybe one weakness and where Canada can hit them is that they're a little bit susceptible to an energetic press, and that's what Marsh likes to do with his teams, or has done in the past in the Premiership in Germany. So I think Canada's going to give Argentina a bit of a run for their money. I'm not going to predict that they pull off all 3 points here. It's more so looking ahead to those games against Chile and Peru. I like Canada's chances against Peru, Huss. So if they can avoid a defeat against Chile, they might be able to. We might see some knockout games for Canadian soccer, which would just be the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, the next matchup is Tuesday in Kansas City against the Peru team, and I'm not sure where they play Chile in the final matchup. But again, all eyes on Mercedes-Benz Stadium tonight. Canada taking on Argentina. That game is on TSN at 7 o'clock, and I'll just plug our pals over at Coolbet for a minute, who of course are presenting all our draft coverage next week in Vegas. If you are supporting the visitors and you're wanting to jump on that more than 10-1 number on Canada to win, if you bet $25 on that, there's a promotion. You just check out the promotions page at Coolbet, but you'll also get $5 for every goal scored in the match by both teams. So there's something to think about if you're looking to make a little sprinkle on this game tonight. Brandon, so we were in the middle of the show yesterday, and sometimes Remis, with the software that we use, will be able to send me a message. I'm not sure we've ever had a full all caps message, but I got one yesterday. Elliott, PLD to Washington. Like, what? So I'm like in the middle of whatever I was doing at the time, talking to whoever, and I'm just kind of trying to pull things up, and I'm like, oh my God, this is not a prank. What did you think when you saw the deal that the Kings made, sending Dubois and his contract with no salary retained and taking on a former King, Darcy Kemper, coming off a very rough season with 3 years left at $5.5 million on his deal?
A very rough season, Huss, but not as rough as what the Kings saw out of BLD. So I think they're looking at that. I'll tell you what, if there's, both teams are doing this. They're trying to rehab the guy that they acquired. I'm going to lean towards LA, getting a lot more out of that than Washington's going to hear. I mean, I don't get it from Washington's perspective. And I don't get how you could essentially throw a life raft to Rob Blake and the LA Kings here, because I get that the Kemper deal didn't work out for them, and Charlie Lindgren was one of the best stories in the league last year. Like I understand that, but how you can't have the team that just signed the guy to an 8-year deal and who's then immediately trying to get him as far away as possible. How you don't, hey, we need a draft pick out of this, or we need salary retention out of this, right? Like I think if you're Washington, you probably could have called LA's bluff and be like, hey, buy him out. We'll sign him for cheap after that, right? Because LA didn't have much of a choice here. If you're trying to move him at that point, you're basically trying to see if you can. It's like a last resort before the buyout eventually happens. So I don't really understand the thought process behind the Capitals. I don't know if they don't watch any West Coast games, Western Conference games these last couple of years, including Winnipeg and LA, because we know what he is at this point. Like I kind of laughed when we saw, like, I'm reading articles, reading comments and things like that, and people are saying, well, the potential is still there with PLD. Like you're talking about a young guy that can be a first line center. He's not young anymore. Like he's going to be 26 in a couple days. Like he's already, if not the peak, like at the peak of what he is. And I don't know. It's the Tobias Funke from Arrested Development, Huss. Like it didn't work for them, but I think it can work for us.
How many times have we seen that? I mean, this happens with talented players in every league. Well, so we can fix them.
Here's the caveat, though, Huss. A lot of those other guys that you touch on have high-end talent and high-end production. He's never had that. He's never broken 70 points. And we have all these teams fighting over each other to be the next one that gets spurned by this guy. I can almost understand it if, Dubois, say in one of the Winnipeg seasons, put up 90 points. You know what I mean? And then it's like, hey, well, if he did it before, he can do it again. He's never done that. Every single place he's gone to, he has turned it on for 30, 40 games in a season and then flipped the off switch for the other half. Except LA, where the off switch was, that one was broken. There wasn't no pushing it back to on there. I don't know. I just don't get it. He seems like a nice guy off the ice. He seems like a smart guy as well, which is interesting in all of this. But there's no polite way to put it. He has not shown that he has the drive and the motivation to be a star player in the NHL. He might have the tools. He has not put it together through 7 seasons, Huss. And we're not going to see him flip the switch in Washington.
And listen, I mean, all I can think about from Washington's perspective, from what they're thinking, is that, A, they're screwed at the center position. I mean, Backstrom's done, and they traded Kuznetsov after all of everything that had happened with him off the ice. And they're looking at a team that is moving forward with a goal of getting Ovechkin his 43 goals to break Gretzky's record. And listen, we can't forget what they did at the end of the season. Somehow qualifying for the playoffs, so they weren't around for very long.
Despite their best intentions, yeah.
Yeah. And think that, okay, this is going to be a guy that will have, and we're going to talk about this with Button later on. I mean, next season's going to be so fascinating when it comes to Dubois, because, even if the Washington media, which I think would be probably in the bottom third of the league as far as, daily coverage and conversation about it, I mean, everyone that follows the NHL, and we're going to be watching Washington a lot just because of Ovechkin, if no other reason, we'll be interested to see what happens with Dubois. And he's the only guy that can work on changing the narrative that he has essentially created with his play and his lack of engagement so often. But I think they're going to be paying extra $3 million for the next 3 years for Dubois than they were for Kemper. And I don't think Kemper was in their plans really moving forward as it was. By the time you get into the fourth year, that $8.5 million for a center might not seem as onerous, with the cap being potentially in and around $100 million. Now, if the guy is just playing one night and then taking 3 games off, like we've seen far too often in the past, it'll be a disaster, and they'll have to deal with it.
I mean, we talk about him like he's we talk about him like he's a 34-year-old guy. Like, hey, we can get a couple good years. He's 26. Like, what are we doing here?
Sign till 31.
Yeah, like we shouldn't be having these conversations. It's a shame that for whatever reason, there's just a lack of motivation on his part to be a consistent performer, game in, game out. Like we've just seen it enough now. Like we've seen it with 3 different teams. He's had more than enough reasons for motivation. Like he's coming off the ELC. Well, hey, he wants a big payday. Well, going into the final year of that RFA deal. Well, he needs another big payday here. Well, he's going to LA. He's got to show up and show that he's worth the money. Well, now he's going to Washington and he's got to show that he can rewrite it. Like it's enough. Like he's had the chances. It's not going to work. It'll be fascinating to watch, and especially if they're on a line together, the ignorance of defensive responsibility between Dubois and Ovechkin. It'll be fascinating to watch just from a societal experiment. How you can have
minus pool.
Yeah, get the green jacket out in Washington. I don't know. To me, this was I just don't know how a team legitimately would watch him play hockey and think, this is a guy that we need to bring into our organization and pay him $8.5 million long term. If you want to bring him in after a buyout, yeah, I could see that. You know what I mean? Like I could understand that a little bit more, but to take on the albatross of a contract, it's an F- in terms of a trade grade.
And for Rob Blake, I mean, that is just a perfect example of just cutting your losses, holding your nose, realizing you effed up, and doing what you can do not to make it worse. And what's wild, and I know that they've said, and they still maintain, that they were not going to buy out Pierre-Luc Dubois. I'm not sure that I entirely believe that. And the timing of this trade is interesting, Brandon, because he's 25 years old right now. You can buy out a player that is under 26 years old at 1/3 of their contract. Once they're 26, it's 2/3 of their contract. Dubois turns 26 on June 24th. If the Panthers had won the series already,
it's amazing.
It's so wild. If the Panthers had won the series already, the buyout window would be open. And you're looking at about 14 years. But, I mean, $1.4 million on the cap for that thing, which would be, 1.5% of what the cap's going to be in a couple years. Because the Oilers have come back in this series and have this game on Saturday, if they were to win Game 6, there's no possibility of the 1/3 buyout, because there's a 48-hour period after the last game of the Cup before it opens, and he'd be 26 by that point. So I'm not sure that the recent play of the Oilers didn't have a big stake in exactly how this shook out. But the bottom line is they had a taker for it. And say they go and get a guy like LB at $3 million or something like that for a few years. Like Kemper, certainly, I think as a backup would be fine, although you're paying him too much money. But that's certainly nothing like what they owed Dubois, and not to mention all the baggage. Like Remis said this earlier, he was listening to our pal Dennis Bernstein do his pod, an emergency pod with the mayor, John Hoven. They're just pumped that this is done and they don't have to talk about the guy anymore. And Rob Blake probably hopes that as well, because major whiff, and as I say, what an unbelievable deal Kevin Cheveldayoff was able to make last year with their backs against the wall, knowing that he really just wanted to go to this one team. And, of course, we'll be talking about that second-round pick from the PLD trade next week when we're in Vegas, because that'll be the first time the Winnipeg Jets will be on the clock.
That's going to be a superstar at this point, right?
Oh, you know what?
Don't trade it.
Yeah, we're getting like Bergeron or something like that at that point. I mean, we were the top second-rounders, like a Braden Point-style player is going to come in and probably makes the team this year and is on the all-rookie team from the second round, the way things have worked out. Let's get to the Cup final. This is series on right now What do you make of, the brilliance of Connor McDavid putting this team on his back, 8 points in the last 2 games of the series. And Brandon, I don't know about you. I think the Oilers get this thing back to South Florida, and we're in a Game 7 situation, very different than most, with the team at home, fully knowing that they're on the verge of arguably the worst collapse in Stanley Cup history. I know that it happened in the 40s with the Leafs, but certainly as long as any of us have been around, this would be the worst if they do it. And I know Paul Maurice said earlier he doesn't believe in momentum. The Edmonton Oilers do.
Yeah, I get why you're saying that, but I don't know if I totally believe the conviction in that statement from Paul Maurice at that point. It's like there's a tsunami over Alberta right now. Like it's crazy how quickly it's changed. I don't think the Oilers have really played all that different, though. It's just Bob was so good in games 1 and 3, and he's been less so in games 4 and 5, and that's kind of been the difference. Edmonton hasn't really changed all that much. They've continued to maybe not take the game to Florida, but at the very least, it's a solid back and forth. It's a little bit like the Dallas series where, one team will push the pace of play for 10 minutes, the other one comes back after that. I will say this. I think Florida has got to feel pretty good about how they ended that game against Edmonton. That was more the Panthers that we're accustomed to seeing, that we haven't really seen for, outside of game 2 so far this series, where they were just overwhelming Edmonton. And the Oilers were pretty lucky that the period wasn't 21 minutes as opposed to just 20, because you could feel them start to push back in a big way. And Matthew Tkachuk has arrived in the Cup final for the first time so far. So I don't think it's a done deal, Game 7 just yet, but count me in as one of those that the winner of Game 6 wins this series. Obviously, Florida does if they win it, but I don't know how you can turn it around at that point if it goes back to Florida. I'm fascinated by what would be going through your mind on the Florida side on the plane ride back to Florida with the series all tied up at 7, and then what it's even like hitting the ice for Game 7 at that point. Because it's not, let's go out there and win it. It's probably, we need to avoid the collapse. And all you're thinking about is the collapse, but you don't want to think, that part of it is really, really intriguing.
You know what else I was thinking about it? We've seen here, when a team goes down 3-0 in a series and you watch the secondary market for tickets, the bottom sort of falls out of it because people don't be spending huge money to go and see their team get bounced, in 4 straight. I wonder what an Oiler win would do to the Game 7 secondary ticket market. I think there'd be a lot of people in Florida that would be going my God, I don't want to be here to see this sort of history made. But I guess on the other side, there'd probably be a lot of people from Edmonton saying, I don't give a damn what it's going to cost me to get there. I've got 2 days to do it. I'm going to be in that building. And all of a sudden, there might be a lot more blue in the arena for a potential Game 5. I don't know. All I know is this. For everyone, including myself, that thought this one was over after it was 3-0 Florida, it absolutely is not. The Oilers are favored tomorrow. I expect them to take advantage of everything they've got going on and that crowd. And I think we're going to be talking about a Game 7 on Monday. It should be a lot of fun. Brandon, always great having you on the program. What's coming up on Skates and Plates these days?
Yeah, well, if the Cup Final ever ends, talk some offseason stuff. That would be nice. But in the meantime, yesterday was a bit of a beauty day in the NHL, so we'll break down a bunch of that. Got a new episode coming out tomorrow, so we'll talk about that. And then, it's draft time right around the corner, which again is crazy. You got to hand it to Bettman, right? Anytime you can have your season go basically until early July and limit the amount of offseason talk you can have regarding the draft and free agency, you absolutely have to do it. So, we'll see. But we got plenty coming up Friday and then Tuesday as well.
Hey, B, have a great weekend and enjoy all these games and enjoy Canada-Argentina tonight.
Sounds good. Vamos, Canada. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Appreciate it. There's Brandon Rewucki. You can give him a follow on Twitter. And again, check out Skates and Plates wherever you get your favorite pods. Tomorrow night, Princess Auto Stadium is the place to be. Bombers Lions 7:30. And that means the Princess Auto tailgate zone gets going at 5:30 p.m., $3.50 poppin' hot dogs, $5 beers, and incredible entertainment and inflatables for the kids. And I believe someone that'll be sitting down with me tomorrow on the program, Bomber legend Andrew Harris, going to be signing autographs there as well from 5:30 to 7. In addition to the game at Princess Auto, don't forget Canada Day coming up just around the corner. Pumped that we're going to be getting back Sunday night. I'll be down there on Monday, July 1st, celebrating our nation with Princess Auto and the Bombers at the Canada Day celebration. Gates open at noon. There'll be all sorts of activities for the kids and the whole family. Main stage performances start at 3 p.m., headlined by Doc Walker and the Sam Roberts Band. Fireworks at dusk. And it is completely free for everybody that wants to attend. So mark it down. July 1st, we'll see you at Princess Auto Stadium for Canada Day. And again, a huge thanks to Princess Auto for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Pop by and see them on Panet Road or Portage Avenue West. And you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Considering how nice it is outside and the current temperament of Bomber fans, I hope they maybe ordered a little extra Canadian Club for the rum hut in the game tomorrow night. Of course, CC is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and proud sponsors of the Blue and Gold, and is available throughout Princess Auto Stadium for all Bomber games. And don't forget, you can also pick up the pre-mixed cocktail Canadian Club and Ginger in cans at Bomber games and at your local beer vendor as well. So try that out if you haven't. Just an amazing drink for the summer and great nights like tomorrow night. And of course, if you're getting ready for the weekend or any time, pop by your local Manitoba liquor marts and make it Canada's favorite and oldest Canadian whiskey, Canadian Club. Scott BIlleck's coming up with us in just a minute. Do want to thank our friends at Wallace & Wallace. And if you want to be spending more time enjoying your summer and not working on a new fence, why not trust the experts in fencing to get your next one done? If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter's done a number on your old one, give them a call. Since 1946, they've been the leaders in fencing, and they've got vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And by the way, if you need a new garage door, Wallace & Wallace also has Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. Easiest way to get in touch is give them a call at 204-452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. And hey, guys, no weddings this weekend for me personally, but you know there's a few later on this summer. And if you're getting ready for one of these events and realizing, oh, man, I got to step up my menswear game, you need to get on down to F Apparel Stat at 190 Smith Street. The guys at F have you covered with the best in men's clothing, including custom suits beginning at just $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an amazing selection of menswear accessories. If you're in a wedding party or having a wedding, make sure to talk to the guys about a 15% discount for wedding parties when you get your suits at F Apparel. F's at 190 Smith Street downtown. Find out more online or make an appointment at F. That's EPHapparel.com. All right, just as we bring in Scott BIlleck, some really sad news. I'm seeing some people mention this in the chat right now. Longtime Winnipegger and former Power 97 and CGOB voice Larry Updike has unfortunately passed away due to colon cancer. So we'll send out our best wishes to the Updikes and their family. I remember back when we founded, the reason for that was I used to call in to Tom and Larry's show all the time, and had the opportunity we won a dinner with Tom and Larry at the Rib Shack on McPhillips. And I had called in. I don't think that they realized that I was only 15 or 16 years old at the time. So myself and my pal Evan Manser went and we met Tom and Larry. I think they were pumped because we weren't 18. I think the drink bill was able to be just kept there with the hosts, but always enjoyed conversations with him and his contribution to the media scene. So just wanted to bring that up. Some real sad news on the passing of Larry Updike. All right, let's bring in Scotty BIlleck from the Winnipeg Sun to Winnipeg Sports Talk. Scott, what's going on? How are you?
Yeah, it's going. And I just echo your sentiment towards Larry. Just a good guy. I mean, all my dealings with Larry over the years. Yeah, just a really good human being.
Versatile dude. Like, he was also a minister. He was on, I don't know how long he was on the airwaves in Winnipeg. It had to be 20 years.
I remember him and like Brian Barkley, right? Like Brian Barkley. I always thought Brian Barkley had the coolest gig in the world because you just got to drive around during rush hour and get paid, right? Like that was just an awesome gig. And then, just back growing up, I mean, I listened to Larry all the time, right? Whether he was on, like you said, Power, or if he was on CJOB, I mean, he was all over the place. And so, yeah. And then later in life, I mean, I talked to him several times during COVID and that sort of thing. And his wife, she was going through cancer as well. And then Larry obviously had the colon cancer, which I think he just announced a week ago. He just had an operation 3 days ago. And yeah, so that's a tough one for Winnipeg, tough one for the community. It's been, it hasn't been a great year for losing some of our media members and that sort of thing.
It's true.
So,
those guys had such a fun show.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
I remember my grade 9 class back at Grant Park. We would have shops usually in the morning, like from 10:30 till 12 or whatever, that class. And our wood teacher would always have that show on. And I would say I was going to the bathroom and I would call into the show from the payphone.
That's
and
awesome.
the kids in the class, and I mean, everyone had a name on that show. Like there was the Punisher and whatever. And so I was a hustler, and I would always say cue ball, corner pocket, a little self-depreciating humor because I was terrible after, even at that time, a couple sodas.
Sure.
And anyways, that is the true origination of the nickname, why people knew, and then it sort of kept on with me later on. But those guys were so much fun. They had a really great original show.
Yeah.
And the back and forth with McGorn and Updike was legendary in Winnipeg media circles. And Larry took a few. I mean, there was the infamous time where McGorn had one of his associates steal Larry's bike and then mailed it back to him. Like all of a sudden, there'd be a package for you up the front of the office, Larry, and he'd go in and there was a pedal in a big envelope, and then there was some reflectors, and listen, they did a whole bunch, but it was just a real sad day for that. And but it does give me some great memories of Larry's contributions to Winnipeg media. Scotty, let's quickly hit the Bombers and what a predicament this team finds itself in. Decimated by injuries, and particularly on defense. The funny thing is the defense hasn't been the concern so far for the year. It's actually been the offense. And it's great to see Brady Oliveira will play, although he's listed at second in the depth chart. Mike O'Shea is going to sort of, see, because the guy has not practiced at all. I mean, maybe you want him in there for a few plays. Listen, I thought Johnny Augustine in his 7 carries acquitted himself well in the game last week. But to me, I mean, I'm looking straight at 8 for this game tomorrow night. I mean, this is a game that Zach Collaros, I think, really needs to raise his level through 2 games and the level of the rest of his teammates and find a way to beat the British Columbia Lions to avoid going 0-3 on the season and looking up at everybody in the West.
Maybe the good omen for the Bombers was that the Winnipeg Sea Bears ousted the best team in the CBL yesterday, and they're also from Vancouver. So maybe that's a good omen for the Bombers. But I agree with you. It's an interesting thing, Huss, because – and just a kind of a sidebar on Brady Oliveira, he was not happy today talking to us. He was not happy that he's listed second on the depth chart. I think Brady Oliveira figures if he's on the lineup, if he's in the lineup, he should be running the ball. And Mike O'Shea said they talked. Brady Oliveira said they didn't talk. So, I mean, it's sort of this sort of side controversy. It's something you don't really see with this team very often, right? And but it's true. You're right. I mean, the offense has to get going. I mean, Johnny Augustine was pretty good in the 7 carries that he got, but they didn't really use the run game. And part of that is dictated by having to claw from behind as they did in that game. again. But, the run game just hasn't been great all year. Zach hasn't been good all year. He's yet to throw a touchdown, right? Very rare do you see a interception to touchdown ratio of 3-0 for Zach Collaros. Never mind his league low. I think it's around 60% efficiency rating. His completion percentage, which is like 54, which is the worst among the 9 quarterbacks in the CFL. These are all just numbers nobody's used to with Zach. This offense, I mean, nobody's really put up big yardage at all. Not a lot of, obviously there hasn't been a throwing touchdown yet this season. Zach's overthrown probably 3 of them. He could have had 2 to Dalton Schoen and 1 to Kenny Lawler in the opener here that they lost to Montreal. So, yeah, it's a weird predicament because we just haven't really seen this team in the last, let's say, since maybe 2018, really. And it's even longer than that. I think it goes back 8 years since 2016, since they started 0-2. You got to go back to, I think, 2012 to see a team that went 0-3 to start the year. They got to pull it out. They do. You're right. They got injuries. Their D line's decimated. They're going to have basically 2 new starters on the D line. The O line needs to figure it out because Zach, as good as he has become and as he's known for a guy who can throw under pressure, has just been under pressure way too often, right? Which leads to underthrown or overthrown
That's where
balls.
it's all starting, if you ask me.
Right, it is, right? And you're right, like the defense has been good, like even with some of their issues. But now that they've lost Celestin Haba, their edge rusher on that, and it's now Adams has to come in and try and do it. That guy's a sideshow. So, again, there's another sidebar here. That guy's your next Jamarcus Hardrick if that guy starts popping off and becomes this big thing, because that guy can do everything. He can throw the ball like a quarterback. He can punt the ball like a punter, and he's a 290-pound defensive lineman. Like, he's just a hilarious guy, fun guy to talk to too. But yeah, you're right. It's offense. It's not the defense right now. Yeah, they got Marquise Bridges starting at boundary half right now, just because there's been a lot of injuries, and Dietrich Nichols being the big one there. You don't replace him, as Mike O'Shea said again today. But you're right. It's the offense. The offense needs to keep the defense off the field a little bit more. Can't start the game with 3 or 4 or 5 2-and-outs in a row. They need to start moving the ball downfield. And then when they get into positions to score, you got to start putting points on the board. And that's been the problem for this team through the first 2 weeks. And you're right. I think these games would have been a lot worse if the defense wasn't at least, good enough. So far, it just hasn't been good enough to win them games, and the offense certainly hasn't been good enough to put them anywhere close to a win just yet.
Well, and to compound it all, their opponents are a hell of a football team. And, they're hosting the Grey Cup this year. There's a lot that's gone in. They were up 14 in their opening game on the road against Toronto. And then, credit to the Argos for coming back and finding a way to win. Won by 9 last week in front of 50,000 plus in their home opener.
Yeah.
And, Scott, I remember vividly last year opening up the season at home and having BC coming in
30s,
and thumping the Bombers.
Yeah.
And what was a real wake-up call. And listen, that is one of the 3 of the 37-3 record that the Bombers had at home coming into the season, which is now 37-4 after Montreal's visit in week 1. But these teams were neck and neck in the West all season last year. If the Bombers have taken a step back, if they're depleted, everyone is going to need to step up if they're going to have a chance to win this football game. And don't think that BC, from the second that schedule came out, when do we get the Bombers? This is a game that, that they'll have circled and they'll be prepared for in a big way. It should be a great one.
Yeah, it should be a very good game, and you got to think the Bombers are going to come out and be like, hey, like we got to finally show up here, because even with some of the injuries, this team has the offense to Swiss cheese defenses, right? It's still got, even without Kenny Lawler, this offense is still very, very good. But yeah, BC, BC's an interesting team. You look at week 1, they lost. Vernon Adams gets sacked 6 times. I think they turned over the ball 3 or 4 times in that game. And then you look at last week, and they're basically perfect, right? So it's an interesting team. I don't think game 1 is very It's just not who they are. I think last week against Calgary was who this BC Lions team is. And they stretched defenses last week. I think Adams is leading the league right now in 20-plus yard throws. The Lions are leading the league in big plays, 28-plus yards. So they have it. They have sort of a lot of everything on that team. And you're right. I mean, they're trying to make the Grey Cup at home. And you expect this from Bombers next year, right, too. So, but this would be a good game for the Bombers to sort of get their swagger back, right, to get themselves – feeling good about their team and what this team is capable of again. I mean, a loss, I think a lot of people were expecting it. I think the CFL power rankings had the Bombers in last place this week. It's probably a little too early for that. But, but it is, at this point, I mean, the Bombers still have to go out and show it. And again, I think if this offense gets going, they're going to be good, but I was way more confident last week this team was going to turn around against Ottawa, and they didn't, right? And so you saw flashes of it last week. Don't get me wrong, you saw flashes of it, but it just hasn't been consistent. And this team needs to, they got to create a turnover. They still haven't done that this year. So you got to do some things, and this team just hasn't executed the way that they want to.
Yeah, listen, I mean, with everything that's happened on defense, I'm not gonna hold it on them. I mean, if this team is going to win, they're going to need to score a heck of a lot more points to do it, and I think they realize that. Very interested to see what Buck Pierce has going. I mean, I know there's some criticism of Buck in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, too early.
We've yet to see Strevler out there with Zach Caleros at the same time. I would think that this might be a perfect time for the old in case of emergency break glass, because if you can, kind of maybe catch your opponents off guard with some special plays, this would be a good team to do it, because I think you're going to need to empty it if you're going to beat the BC Lions tomorrow at Princess Auto Stadium. Scott, the other big topics on the docket today are the Cup Final and a certain trade that happens yesterday. I will throw it to you, of which you would like to address first.
Let's do the trade first, right? Like,
yes,
that's the most.
That's the answer.
That's the most fun one to do, right? That's what the fans want to, what the listeners want to hear about.
What did you think when you heard? What was your reaction? All of a sudden, you're going, wait, what?
I was surprised. Yeah, I was. It was shocking in the sense that they actually found a dance partner to make a trade with, right? Like, I was arguing with this about Kenny yesterday, because, like, to me, the picks 2 to 4 of that draft, 2006 draft, are essentially busts based on where they were taken, right? Like, you would expect. So Austin Matthews went first overall, but now we look at where Patrick Laine is, and his best years seem to be 1 and 2 in that year, and then he's fallen off. Dubois has been all right, but when you're a 3rd overall pick, you probably want more from a guy that's 3rd overall. And then Jesse Puljujärvi went 4th, and I forget who went 5th, but he's really good. I'd have to look it up.
No, he was terrible. Wasn't that Uliulevy for Vancouver?
Oh, was it 6? I think 6 is the next one then.
Yeah,
Whoever
you might be familiar with him. He's playing in the Cup Final, and he's a rat.
Yes,
Matthew Tkachuk.
That's it. Yeah. I was looking at this the other day with Derek Taylor. We were sitting on the sidelines trying to figure out how bad that draft was, at least for like how those guys have turned out. Anyways, I was shocked that Rob Blake. Here's a couple things. It takes a lot for a GM and his ego to admit that you're wrong. And Rob Blake, I think yesterday, admitted that he was wrong and did the right thing. I was shocked that Washington took him, but then I was listening to, I think it was either Elliott or I was reading something saying that Washington's this team that sort of takes in these guys that are on their 2nd or 3rd chances. And I was looking at their roster, and he's right. Like Dylan Strome was one of those guys. Son of Milano, TJ Oshie even at one point, because Oshie was sort of out of the kind of whatever, out of the circle there in St. Louis. So they have this sort of, I guess, reputation for bringing in sort of guys like this. But this is like those other guys, fine, but Dylan Strome and Sonny Milano and all those guys, not huge money and all tied to risk. You've brought in a guy that's got 7 years left on an $8.5 million AAV that now, well, as soon as July 1st comes, is on a full no move for the next at least five of the 7. I think he might move into a no trade in the last 2 years, but it's like a 15 team. So like half the league. It's risky, right? It's super risky. But if you look at their depth, you're also like, well, they don't have Nicholas Backstrom. And so his career is probably done. And so your center depth then is
and Kuznetsov.
Strome, and Kuznetsov's gone, exactly. And so your center depth after Strome is Connor McMichael, who had a good year, but is he a second line center in the NHL? I don't know. Hendrix Lapierre, who's a highly touted draft pick, but still an unknown if he's going to be good in the league. Now you have Pierre-Luc Dubois, who again I would say is still a bit of an unknown, right? If not unknown in the fact that I don't know if you saw Jordan Schmaltz's tweet yesterday.
Oh yeah, what an interesting moniker for old PLD. He took a serious stray on that one.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that one was that one's from the top. That was from the top of the Hell in the Cell. That's what that one was. But it's an interesting deal, right? I mean, I think if you're Washington, you feel like you've gotten your there it is. There we go. I love the line though about has all the tools to be a force, but isn't afraid to take a game or 10 off. Man, that's just that whole tweet is fire, right?
Accurate.
But that's it, right? I mean, even if you're trying to look at Pierre-Luc Dubois objectively, which is sorry about that, which is our job in the media here is to do that. You still have to look at this guy's going to be on his 4th team. He's kind of weaseled his way out of Columbus by essentially quitting. We've all seen the shift. He didn't want to stay in Winnipeg, which might have been the best place for him to stay because he would have been the first-line center. The Jets may or may not have moved on from Mark Scheifele at that point. It depends, right? You don't know what would have happened last summer if they would have kept Dubois. Then he goes to the place where he says this is a dream of his to go to the Los Angeles Kings, and he plays like it wasn't his dream. And then Rob Blake's like, I got it. I got to cut bait before, and like they cut bait right before his no move cut it, and like that's to me, it's just like I don't know what's going to wake Pierre-Luc Dubois up, but that's got to be it, right?
If this isn't, nothing ever will.
Well, no, nothing will, right? Because the only other place for him to go after this, like I mean, I kind of joked. The first thing I thought yesterday was when I heard it, I was like, well, at least the move next summer to Montreal won't be as far as it would be from LA to Montreal, right? So, I mean, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know what he's got to do. Like, this is a guy that's got to look inside himself and be like, hey, like the problem isn't the city or the team or the head coach. It's me, right? Like, it's him. It's him. That's the problem.
One of the Vegas series before every game.
Yeah.
He plays next year to remind him at the level that he can be.
And that's a huge risk for Brian McClellan and the Washington Capitals, right? Because if he does, what do you do? Like, I mean, I know there was talk about LA buying him out, right? But the whole buyout problem becomes a bigger problem once they get past Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, right?
Well, listen, it comes down to it. Bottom line, if Edmonton wins tomorrow, they do not have the opportunity to buy him out as a 25-year-old, and it becomes twice as expensive. And I know they said, we're not going to buy him out. We're not going to buy him out. Listen, the fact of the matter is, though, this is better, I think, than buying him out. At least they get a player that can come in. They want to buy Kemper out, they can do that. It'll still be less expensive than it would be for the Dubois trade.
Yeah, this is a good long-term trade and Quinton Byfield made this possible, right? Like, let's not take anything away from Quinton Byfield's year and what he did to make this a possibility for Rob Blake to go and trade, right? Because I think if anything, Rob Blake can go to Quinton Byfield and pay him very well, and they're going to have to, right? They're going to have to pay him very well. But he made this possible by having a heck of a year last year, and a guy that they think that he can be the guy that now sort of takes over for Anze Kopitar down the road.
Well, I'll tell you what, BIlleck, it's going to be like that story is fascinating. This series
can you wait till he comes back to Winnipeg, though?
Again, now we're looking at, when's the Washington game on the schedule next year?
Here's the other thing that we were joking about yesterday, which is, this is sort of the anti-Winnipeg slant on this. When was if they come here, whenever it is, and he passes 890 or 895 to Alex Ovechkin, beats Connor Hellebuck? I mean, that would be that's still like this little historical films there, but that would be kind of
Okay, enough trolling of us, myself, and our audience. Thank you very much. Hey, listen, enjoy the football game tomorrow.
Yeah,
we'll look
should be
forward to
good.
all of your coverage in the Sun, and of course the Cup Final. And next week we can focus in on the off season, which is going to start at some point, but I think a lot later than many of us expected. Potentially after Monday night. BIlleck, thanks for doing this as always.
Yep. See you guys. Have a good one. Yep.
All right. There is Scotty BIlleck of the Winnipeg Sun. I was just mentioning how nice it is outside. We got Gold Eyes coming up tonight. Do not forget, the Fish are continuing to be at home throughout the weekend. We've got some nice weather coming up. Perfect time. Thanks again to everybody that came out and joined us for the WST patio party at the Gold Eyes game on Tuesday. Again, goldeyes.com for tickets, groups, and feel free to, if you're thinking about doing maybe a corporate or group outing, check out those patio decks down the left field line right by Craft Beer Corner. Can tell you they did an amazing job on them and a great spot for a great outing if you're looking for something for your company. Goldeyes.com for all that information. And as I mentioned right off the bat, this is a perfect time. Finally, we're getting some beautiful weather to get out to the beer can just over the Osborne Bridge, adjacent to the Granite, the biggest, most beautiful outdoor beer garden bar in the city, featuring the best in local beer from around Winnipeg and Manitoba, and incredible food as well by the devious minds from the Cosmos Food Cantina, also the guys behind Hoagie Boys down on South Osborne. Make it the beer can tonight or this weekend. And if you haven't been there before, make sure to check it out. Follow them on Instagram, by the way, at the Beer Can WPG for the latest on the programming that happens. Tons of great events, DJs, other activities happening there throughout the summer as well. I need to tell you guys, and if you have a goalie in your family, this is the weekend for the big goalie extravaganza over at the Hockey for All Center. Every year, once a year, the gang puts together the time for you can come out and check out all of the new equipment. So if you have a goalie in the family, 10:30 to 3 p.m., Hockey for All Center. Get down there. You can bring your own gear, and you can try out the new CCM Bauer Warrior and True goalie equipment with expert on-ice instruction from the Ice Lab's Andy Kohler. In addition, all attendees get a special voucher that entitles them to special deals on goal equipment. Plus, there'll be some giveaways, and one lucky attendee who makes a purchase by the end of the month will get their entire purchase for free. Again, 10:30 to 3, calling all goalies. Get down to the Hockey for All Center, brought to you by Royal Sports, Winnipeg's #1 hockey shop since 1974. And hey, tomorrow, if you're conflicted between watching the Bombers, watching Game 6 of the Cup Final, the next best place to be, other than the stadium, of course, is your local Boston Pizza. Have your cake and eat it too. Bombers and Lions on one TV, Panthers and Oilers on the other, and you'll still be able to enjoy those ice-cold schooners, the amazing playoff menu, including the wing flights, the Sicilian square-footer pizza, the jalapeno popper dip. It's all there. And hey, tonight and any night, if you want to get the great taste of Boston Pizza at home, you can order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, we are going to now welcome in TSN's Director of Scouting, Craig Button, get his reaction to the PLD trade, the Cup Final, and a look ahead to next week's draft. Our draft shows presented by Coolbet begin Wednesday in Vegas. Here's Craig Button.
Craig, it is great to have you on the program. Oh, I love the Harbaugh shirt. Who's got it better than us? No one, because we've got you on the program today. What's going on?
Hey, I see you're wearing your Canadian national men's team soccer shirt. So, a great Thursday night in sport with no NBA, no NHL going on, and certainly all eyes on Atlanta with the national team. Alphonso Davies was up in Edmonton for Game 3, and it was pretty special to see the applause he got and the reception he got. And certainly, you get to go up against Messi in the Copa. It'll be pretty impressive to watch. Can't wait for that. So we're all representing something that we feel good about.
Yeah, you bet. I'm really looking forward to this tonight, and of course the entire tournament. Canada get a huge underdog against Argentina, but just to be on that stage, I think, is a great sign for our program. Listen, I want to get into the Cup Final and the draft with you, Craig, but it was a wild day yesterday. A couple of significant trades. We were just in the middle of our program yesterday when Pierre-Luc Dubois got traded to the Washington Capitals. What was your immediate reaction to the trade? And from Rod Blake's perspective, is this just cutting bait and trying to make a bad situation not worse in the future?
I think you nailed it. And my first thought was good on Rob Blake. Rob Blake made a big trade with the Winnipeg Jets last summer in acquiring Pierre-Luc Dubois, and also in signing Pierre-Luc Dubois to a long-term contract. And certainly, there was a lot of, I shouldn't say, there's rumblings about maybe the LA Kings would buy out Pierre-Luc Dubois, if they could do it prior to his 26th birthday at 1/3 the cost of the contract. But Rob Blake didn't fall for any type of what I would call a false illusion. Well, maybe he'll be better next year. Maybe it can work out. Rob Blake had a year to assess it. And more than that, had a year to assess his own work. And he said, you know what? Not only was Pierre-Luc Dubois abysmal for the LA Kings, because there's no other way to put it. They're like anybody that wants to put it any other way is not being honest. And I know Pierre-Luc came out and he said, I can be better next year and everything. Rob Blake wasn't buying. He said, I've seen enough and I'm cutting bait. I am not going to carry down this path. And more than that, he also addressed something that was important to his team, goaltending. Because Darcy Kemper has shown playing behind a really good defensive team. He can be really good. The Washington Capitals were a terrible defensive team last year. So don't even look at the numbers for Darcy Kemper. I think it's a nice fit for the LA Kings. Rob not only addressed something that he needed to address in his goaltending, he got cap flexibility, and he wasn't buying that maybe Pierre-Luc will be better next year or the year after. He said, enough's enough. I'm done.
Craig, take us through Brian McClellan's thoughts on making this deal. And I guess for Dubois, the pressure that comes along with another move and the challenge of him to salvage his reputation in his career. He's going to be getting paid, but there's a lot of expected of a player that's getting that sort of a check. And Washington seems to be giving him an opportunity to turn this thing around.
That's exactly what Brian's doing, right? So Brian looked at it and said, okay, Darcy is somebody that, didn't really fit into what we were trying to do going forward. And at the same time, they traded Kuznetsov. They lost Backstrom. They're trying to find a center iceman. I mean, on Monday, the 24th of June, Pierre-Luc will turn 26. So he's looking at trying to add a big, strong player in Pierre-Luc Dubois, and hopefully that a change and playing with Ovechkin, playing with some other good young players, rekindles some of the good play that we've seen from Pierre-Luc Dubois. I've watched Pierre-Luc play since he was 15 years of age. I've always been a big Pierre-Luc Dubois fan, and I think that I think anybody that's watched him play at his very best, and we've seen good long stretches of that at over time at different points, you cannot help but be impressed. But at the same time, you nailed it. This is now up to Pierre-Luc Dubois to change the narrative surrounding him. Because the narrative surrounding Pierre-Luc Dubois wrote it. So if you want the next chapter to be different and the chapters after that to be different, this is your opportunity to rewrite it. He has written the narrative of himself of being somebody that's doesn't perform on a consistent level anywhere near his capabilities. Because when he is near his capabilities, he's somebody that's coveted. Brian McClellan is hoping for that player to surface and to show himself as that capability on a regular, consistent basis.
Craig, Dubois called his shot and got everything he wanted. Why do you think it went so poorly in LA?
It's a great question. And you start out the beginning of the year, and the LA Kings were really good. And to start off, and then all of a sudden they couldn't find a way to win games. And it cost Tom McClellan his job. Tom McClellan is a really good coach and somebody that's trying to manage things. Listen, why do I think it went so bad for Pierre-Luc Dubois in LA? I think that's probably a question that Tom McClellan asked himself, Rob Blake asked himself, and everybody involved in the situation. Pat Brisson, who represents Pierre-Luc Dubois, who signed that long-term contract, is a question that yes. I'm not going to speculate. I could come up with answers and say, all I'm going to say is that whatever happened to Pierre-Luc Dubois made it happen. He made it happen. He's the one that was the architect of his own dismal play. Him and him alone. There was no injuries. They had him in good situations with good players. He was the architect. So when the building has leaks and the piping doesn't work and the electricity doesn't work, he was the architect and he was the builder of the Pierre-Luc Dubois structure. Like I said, it's up to him to change the narrative because he wrote it. Nobody else wrote it. He did.
Craig, the other deal yesterday was one that we'd heard smoke about for a long time. Jacob Markstrom, the New Jersey Devils. The deal finally gets done for Kevin Ball and a future first-rounder. What did you think of the return for Calgary, and why do you think this deal happened when it did?
Well, first of all, Jacob Markstrom had a full no-move clause, so he's going to be able to dictate where he wants to go. I don't think there was any lack of interest in Jacob Markstrom from different teams around the league, including we just talked about the LA Kings. And I'm not saying it was Jacob Markstrom. We know that they were interested in Linus Ullmark. So you have to look at the goaltending scenario. Craig Conroy talked about, knowing the goaltending market and knowing who was interested. And he also knew where Jacob Markstrom might feel comfortable going. And so you try to work that out. There was rumors about it during the course of the year. What Craig Conroy has shown over the course of his first year as a GM is that he's not going to be squeezed into things that don't fit for his team or what his team desires. So people can say that, okay, what's the return? I heard the same thing last summer when he traded Tyler Toffoli for Igor Sharangovich. Oh my God, he's so low on Tyler Toffoli. No, he didn't. He got a terrific return. And general managers don't sell low. They don't turn down first-round draft picks and roster players to take something lesser. The marketplace. You knew where it was at with Jacob Markstrom. 2 years left on a contract. Jacob controls the situation. I think it's an excellent fit for the New Jersey Devils. I think the New Jersey Devils had to address it. I think that Tom Fitzgerald was slow in addressing it last year. That's no longer the case. And certainly when you look at the New Jersey Devils, a good young team and it's really good players, and now the goaltending will be stabilized. For the Calgary Flames, it feels like everything is building to a new arena in 2028. Try to be competitive. They got multiple draft picks this year, multiple draft picks next year. Going forward, trying to position their team that when the new arena opens, is that these players that they're going to be drafting are ready to come in and perform. And teams try to remain competitive, and they play with semantics: retool, rebuild, reload. Bottom line is that's what it feels like to me in Calgary, is that everything's building to a new arena in 2028.
Greg Button with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Greg, I've got to ask you about the Cup Final. I think a lot of people, myself included, thought that we would be talking about the draft exclusively right now after the Panthers went up 3-0 in the series. I don't even know where to start with what Connor McDavid's doing all playoffs, but particularly in these last couple games. But the series is back on in a big way, and Friday is going to be bananas at Rogers Arena in Edmonton. How have the Oilers done it, and what's going on in that Florida room, the Florida coach's office, and on that plane going back to Edmonton for Game 6?
Yeah, and so certainly, McDavid, to me, he's the Conn Smythe Trophy winner news. I mean, I think that he's cemented that
I think it's over.
He is worthy. Yeah, I do too. I'm right with you. They should just engrave his name on it so he can become the first Conn Smythe Trophy winner to be handed the Conn Smythe Trophy with his name already engraved. Anyway, all kidding aside, he's been brilliant. And, he's found a level of play, and we know how great a player he is, but he is showing that he can take a team and put it right on his shoulders. Because Leon Draisaitl, as good a player as he is, has not been able to produce at anywhere near the level you would expect them to. So Connor McDavid has been brilliant. the Florida Panthers are a great forechecking team, and they suffocate you, and they really to take away your ice. I think that the Edmonton Oilers have done a nice job of stretching the ice. They being in the forecheck. They're able to open up the middle of the ice with moving the puck. I don't think there's any better example of what they've done over the field at that time than the Connor McDavid third goal when Bouchard just flips the puck up and they get into a foot race. And that's how you got to beat Florida. I think two things now going forward for the Florida Panthers. I thought the third period, even maybe the last 7 minutes of the second period of Game 5 in the third period, they started to really push and they started to assert themselves once again. I think that, the detail in their game, when it's there, it's really strong. And I think that Paul Maurice talking about not being deflated is really important. Hey, they know what they got to do. They got to be more detailed. They can't fall behind with some loose play. The turnovers were hurting them. The Edmonton Oilers are no longer playing with house money. They were playing with house money in Game 4 and Game 5. The Edmonton Oilers now going home for Game 6. It's a series. We talk about the series is on, right? Well, the series is on. So the Edmonton Oilers, not that they're not relaxed, not that they're not confident, but it's a different feeling now. And I think that the Florida Panthers, as you move in there, you got 3 wins. You need 1. Now you got to go in there and assert yourself, apply yourself to the degree that allows you to push a team, further away from what they're trying to do. The Florida Panthers have shown they can do that. I think that they can use that to their advantage, just going in and saying, okay, Game 4, it was a disaster. Game 5, we started to find our game going forward, just like the Edmonton Oilers started to find their game in the period 3 of Game 3. I think that the Florida Panthers have to take that and build on that to find a way to win the Stanley Cup. If it goes back for Game 7 in Florida, all bets are off for the Florida Panthers, and I'll put all my chips in on the Edmonton Oilers for a Game 7 victory if it gets back to Florida on Monday.
Well, and I mean, what's unique about this series is the fact that it was 3-0, and we don't see it very often. Teams even get back into series at all after being down 3-0, and yet Edmonton is here. And I would suggest that there's psychological baggage that the Panthers have right now, just having not finished it off so far. They've already had their family come up to Edmonton once. I mean, it does change the pressure and a lot of the narratives around it. And I mean, I think that's probably hard for everybody within the Florida Panthers dressing room to ignore, but you kind of have to do that and get back to what got you to that 3-0 lead in the first place.
Exactly. And Paul Maurice has been so measured and so calm and purposeful in dealing with the team and dealing with the situation. Remember, they were behind 2-1 against the New York Rangers in the Eastern Conference Final, losing that overtime game. And then they reeled off 3 in a row to win that series and 3 in a row at the beginning of the Stanley Cup Final. They understand what's at stake. They also understand that they don't want to be in a situation where all the pressure comes back to them. Because all the pressure isn't on them in Game 6. And I'm not suggesting it's all on the Edmonton Oilers, but it's still a best of 7 for the Florida Panthers. It's a best of 1 for the Edmonton Oilers, just like it has been in Game 4 and Game 5. So take that and ratchet it up against the Edmonton Oilers and ratchet that up and make them feel the pressure. Because you've come this far, and the Edmonton Oilers have made a series of it. And good on them. But now you got to turn the screw on them a little bit, like they did in the third period. If the Florida Panthers can come out and establish their game right from the beginning of Game 6, like they did in the period 3 of Game 5, I think they'll be in good shape. Does that mean that the game will be a blowout one way? No, I don't think that. But that'll give the Florida Panthers, if they fall behind in the game again, I think it's lights out. I think they're going to have a struggle, and now the pressure will be all on the Panthers. Not only in that game, but trying to find a way, knowing you're going back, having a 3-0 lead, and it's a best of 1 for both teams.
Yeah, it's the old thing. Don't let them get hot. Well, Connor McDavid's hot, so are the Oilers right now. And listen, with no skin in the game.
Thing to that too?
Please do.
Bob Gainey always said this, and I remember you're working with Bob for as long as I worked with Bob. And the one thing that he always talked about in this series, he goes, when you have home ice, he said, at times, he said, you go into a game 6 with a series lead, and you think that you have the cushion of a game 7 at home. He said, all the pressure comes on the home team in game 7 because you have the home ice. The opposing team now is tied up the series, and they have nothing to lose. So he said, he always said, treat game 6 like a game 7. That would be my advice for Paul Maurice and the Florida Panthers.
Craig Button with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Of course, TSN's Director of Scouting. WST at the NHL Draft in Vegas, presented by Coolbet, begins next Wednesday. We'll look forward to seeing you there, Craig. Listen, we've talked about Backlund Celebrini before, but, a week or so out from the draft, who are the most intriguing players to you? And are there some players, is there a player or two that you find you're particularly high on as opposed to maybe some of your contemporaries in the scouting business?
Yeah, I mean, I say this with complete assuredness and confidence. The top 10 lists for all 32 teams will be different. And so that's just part and parcel of it. Where a team places a player, where they value a certain type of player, that's all going to be different. So whether it be the NHL teams, whether it be me or contemporaries, as you mentioned, it's all going to be different. It's all dependent. I'll tell you a quick story. In the 2011 NHL Draft, I know TSM was doing the draft, and we were having a meeting, and we were talking about, is there any player that might end up in the top 10? And, you're watching, you're paying attention. And I said Mark Scheifele. I did say Mark Scheifele. And it's not like I knew anything. It's just, you mentioned a player. Well, I got shot down pretty quick. I said, okay, fine. No problem, right? Anyway, Mark Scheifele went 7. Steve Dryden, who was the managing editor at TSN, he goes, what did you know about Mark Scheifele? I said, I didn't know anything. I just brought up that was a player, because if you go back and look at it, Mark Scheifele was somebody that a lot of people weren't saying was going to be going that high in the draft, including our group at TSN, who do a lot of really good research and have a lot of really good knowledge. It goes without saying, last year, the 2 Russians, Shivashov went 6, and Deep went 12 to Arizona, which is now Utah. Demidov is a brilliant player. There's one player. If he goes 2, is anybody going to be shocked? If he goes 6, is he going to be? I don't think anybody would be shocked. I look at players. I think TJ Ginla is a heck of a player. I think the 4 defensemen, for me, right at this point in time, Boyum, Parak, Dickinson, Levshunov, to me, they're the 4 best defensemen in the draft. And they could go in any order. One could go as the first pick. So there's some wild card capabilities within groups of players. Bob McKenzie's going to have his final list, his final ranking out, which is a great indicator of how the draft will unfold, of the work he does in canvassing NHL scouting personnel, decision makers. That'll come out on Monday. But, I think we're pretty confident that we know that 8 or 9 of the first 10 players. We're just not sure what order they're going to go into. And I think that speaks to the different types of, value equations teams put on the different players. But you want the defenders in the top 10, you want some good forwards, they're there as well. The only thing we're certain of is Celebrini is going 1. We know that.
Craig, let's talk about the team in your backyard, the Calgary Flames, who, are really looking at the future. You mentioned TJ Ginla. Ginla is not just any last name in Calgary. But he really has seemed to be a big riser this year. Maybe just speak to the year that he had and what he's done for his prospects as an NHLer this season, but also where the Calgary Flames are, knowing that there could be pressure, but at the same time, if they pick the guy, they could be sort of accused of some sort of nepotism, if you will.
Yeah. I'm going to go back in time. Tej was a first-round draft pick to the Seattle Thunderbirds. So he was already recognized as a really good young player. He represented Canada at the U17 Challenge. And, so he was a player that was clearly on the radar and everything. But played in Seattle on a really, really good team. And then they went and acquired a number of players. Brad Lambert was one of them that came into play. And understanding that as a young 16-year-old player, your ice time was going to be diminished. And certainly he ended up coming out of the lineup because, that was a championship caliber. Well, they won the championship. They went to the Memorial Cup Final. That was a really good team. But T's already had a pedigree in terms of his own abilities and capabilities. I think practicing against really top-notch defensemen every single day, playing in practice against really good forwards and with really helped him. He ends up in Kelowna, not because Seattle didn't want him. They were trying to retool with respect to draft picks after going for it. And now what ends up happening is he ends up in Kelowna, and all those things that he was developing, what I would say, behind the curtain. And we didn't see it. And how could you see it? You didn't know it. And then you watch over the course of the year, and it just becomes more and more obvious the abilities that he has, the impact he can have on the game. And it was really significant. And quite frankly, I was in Dallas when we drafted Jerome in 1995. And Tease is a lot like Jerome in this regard. There's not a lot of flash and dash to his game. There's a lot of real massive substance. And Jerome was clearly the best player in the 1995 draft. As it relates to the Calgary Flames, I think it's interesting. If Teague is there at 9, I don't think he will be there at 9 for the Calgary Flames, so I don't think it's a decision they'll have to make. Lanny McDonald and Jerome Iginla are the faces of the Calgary Flames, period, full stop. And I think that you always wonder, like Teague, I can go play there, but the way that Jerome is viewed in this, it would be hard for people not to look at Teague in a way and not measure him on that standard. And that becomes something that could be cumbersome for the organization as much as it would be for Teague, because the expectations sometimes may be too high to be realized, and that doesn't mean the player's not going to be a good one, because I think Teague is going to be a really good NHL player.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's just fascinating that if he gets to 9, he's clearly a top 10 prospect. I mean, everyone's speaking about him that way. Even if they were sort of maybe kind of slightly like another player, could they pass on the son of Jerome Iginla in that situation? It's probably maybe best for the player and the team if he does go in the top 8, but I got to tell you, if Calgary's on the clock and Iginla's there, that could be one of the real moments of the first round.
Can you imagine the anticipation? Can you imagine? I mean, all the teams have watch parties and draft parties. Can you imagine the anticipation to think about Jerome? I will say, I joked about this. I said, yeah, well, then maybe the Calgary Flames draft, and then they trade him to the Dallas Stars for a big-time star.
Wouldn't that be something? Craig, thanks so much for doing this. We'll look forward to seeing you in person next week in Vegas. Will you just give people a quick tease on, you mentioned Bob's list on Monday and everything that you and the TSN team will have once the Cup Final's over, heading into the week down in Vegas in the first round on Friday.
Yeah, well, we got Bob's list on Monday, and as I said, it's a real good indicator of how the draft will unfold. Bob's work over decades has been tremendous, and certainly a real good preview of how the draft will unfold. We're going to do a mock draft, which is always fun. People go, how do you know? You're right, I don't know. I try to be the general manager for 32 teams and try to have some fun with it, who would be a good fit and why. And I think we take that. And then once we get on the ground in Vegas, Darren Drager will be there, and we'll be trying to do the analysis, because there's going to be a lot of work heading into free agency. We saw trades on Wednesday. There's going to be more trades. There's going to be more movement. And then all the speculation is teams trying to, recalibrate their rosters, not only heading into free agency, but into free agency. So we're going to have it covered start to finish, beginning once the series ends, right through free agency with free agent frenzy on July 1st.
Craig, can't thank you enough as always, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week in Vegas. Thanks so much for doing this.
Who's got it better than us?
The showboats or the champions. We're here for the good ones. The ones who work hard and show up for others, not to get recognized, but because it's the right thing to do. We'd like to think that our good intentions show up in our beer. We keep working to perfect it, not because we want fame or fanfare, but because you deserve it. 1919, the good you deserve.
All right, 3 cheers to our friends at Little Brown Jug. I'm actually going to probably have a couple of LBJs tonight with our old pal Dustin Nielsen, who is in town to call the game tomorrow night. Shout out to our pal LTE, Dusty's cohort on the morning show, who actually jumped in and talked some soccer with me on the Lock Shop. And we're going to be doing that in a moment because, of course, Canada-Argentina playing tonight in one of the biggest games in Canada's men's national team's history, going up against Messi. I do want to thank our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Cannot wait to get there later on this summer. If you're thinking about whether it be personal or for a corporate outing, taking in a world-class fly-in fishing resort where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, make it Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. Incredible fishing, and to be honest, the only thing better than the fishing might be the amazing hospitality from the Turenne family and the amazing Aikens team. Go online to aikenslake.com. You can find out everything about this one-of-a-kind oasis of summer, and you can also contact our pal Pitt Turenne through the website or their social media at Aikens Lake on availability and options for the remainder of the 2024 fishing season. Shout out to our friends at Assiniboia Downs. Remo made up a little ground on me last night. I had a couple winners, but he's found his stride, if you will, a few weeks in. Still has some work to do to catch me, but we're seeing the board a lot better. Of course, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is live racing nights at Assiniboia Downs, so maybe make a plan for next week to get out there. And if you are heading out, don't forget that amazing prime rib buffet available every live racing night in the dining room clubhouse. But you are going to want to make a reservation because it does fill up. You can give them a call at 885-3330 for more information on that and booking. And of course, all the information on the entire summer and other weekend events is available at AssiniboiaDowns.com. Quick Breezy Bend golf update for you folks. It's the Travelers Championship, another elevated event. Our lock shot picks are looking pretty nice. Pat Gregoire has been on an absolute heater. And our guy, Akshay Bhatia, is part of a group at 6 under, tied for the lead, along with Ricky Fowler, Kurt Kitayama, Willie Z, and our guy, Tom Kim. Scotty Scheffler in at 5 under par, along with Coolbet's own Taylor Pendrith, Canadian Mackenzie Hughes. Other individuals of note that we're following, Corey Connors, 3 under, Nick Taylor, Canadian, 2 under. Xander Schauffele's 3 under. He's just through 9 holes right now. And my guy, Tony Finau, 2 under through 9. Breezy Bend, great supporters of ours and one of the top private golf courses in the city. If you're thinking about making Breezy a long-term home for you and your family, talk to our pal Corey Johnson at the clubhouse. You can also find out more on membership and wedding rentals and more online at breezybend.ca. All right, well, listen, this is a historic match tonight. Messi in Argentina, Canada, and Alphonso Davies, the stack man, Steven Eustachio, and their new manager, Jesse Marsh, to get you ready for tonight's game, the significance of it, and what Canada's up against. Let's welcome in my pal, Steven Sandor, longtime Canadian soccer writer on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Double S, it's great to have you back on Winnipeg Sports Talk. How are you?
Oh, great to be back. It's it's going to be a lot of fun tonight in Atlanta, won't it? It'll be interesting to see what kind of lineup Argentina throws out against Canada, and as well as just exactly how many Canadian fans actually paid the thousands of dollars to see this game, because the Messi premium is out there that we're seeing across North America when he plays. It's going to be a raucous, very pro-Argentine crowd. It's going to be 95% light blue in there.
Yeah, well, I know a few pals from Winnipeg that have made the trip. I know Matty Owanek in Edmonton, and your neck of the woods is down there. So there will be a little bit of red there, and I'm sure the Voyageurs will be repping. Heck, if a whole bunch of them could come to Qatar, I'm sure they can make it to Atlanta to see Canada take on Argentina. Like, how significant of a match is this in Canadian soccer history? I mean, we knew how important it was to qualify for the World Cup back in Qatar in 2022. there's been a lot of turmoil really in the program over the last year and a half since that happened. They've got a brand new coach in Jesse Marsh, and now will be on the world stage in the first match of the Copa tournament, which is the biggest one outside of the World Cup for teams in this hemisphere.
Yes, it is. And it's now that it seems to be amalgamated with CONCACAF, with our region, because it used to be the South American tournament. And now it looks like it's really, with the marketing, they need the United States. CONMEBOL, the South American Federation, knew that they need the United States involved. They started flirting with this a couple of tournaments ago, and now it seems to be a fully, tournament of the Americas rather than just a South American tournament. And this means that it's opened it up for teams from our region. And of course, it's in the United States where they can get into these big markets, and it'd be in Atlanta tonight for the opening, and obviously taking advantage of the dollars that Lionel Messi will generate by playing for Argentina. And I wonder how much of that pressure, formulates the Argentine lineup, because let's face it, this is a team that's quite old. They've won their World Cup. They're the world champions, but they're not really. Usually Argentina refreshes their squad quite a lot because the country's so deep, and they've always had one of the top youth programs in the world. But when you look at the number of young players on this roster, there aren't many. There's a lot of guys in their 30s. There's a lot of guys in their late 20s. And you wonder that in a wear and tear of a tournament like this, if they had their druthers, I think that they might not start everyone against Canada tonight. But I think the pressure, because they need to showcase Messi, all of the people there looking to see the Argentine stars, there's a lot of pressure on Argentina to make sure they start their A lineup most of the time. And I think that might not serve them well long term, but I think tonight they'll be fresh, they'll be ready. But it will be, it's still a massive challenge for Canada. You have, we celebrate the fact that, Alphonso Davies is at Bayern and possibly going to Real Madrid, and Jonathan David's at Lille and possibly going to play in the Premiership this year. To Argentina, that's like Tuesday. That's like every one of their players, right? Like this is like it's a litany of top Premiership Italian teams, Spanish teams that they all play for. So this is it's a full-on all-star team. They're deep everywhere. It's a much bigger challenge than honestly that Canada had at the World Cup with any of their games in the World Cup. And they
were in the group of death as well. I mean, with some really strong. But I mean, again, Argentina ended up winning the whole thing. I will remind everyone they did lose to the Saudis.
Yes, the opener tournament.
Which I mean, just the great thing about soccer is that you can have incredible upsets. No one is expecting that tonight. But as far as this tournament goes, Steve, after Argentina, they go to Kansas City to play the Peru, and then their third game is against Chile. Neither of these teams are in the stratosphere of the Argentines. What are the hopes for Canada at this, and what are the chances that they could get results against those other teams and potentially play beyond the group stage?
See, now, like if I was advising Jesse March, and of course, no player would want to hear this on the Canadian roster because they want to play in the biggest games, they want to play the biggest opponents. But again, when you're managing a tournament, when you have 3 games in short order with the travel, like you said, you look at the 3 games on the calendar and you would say, what's winnable, right? And I think this is, you would say, would we actually maybe not start our best squad against Argentina and save our guys so they'd be fresh for the 2 games where we think we can get points? Because obviously if we get results the other 2, we're going through. And in the end, it's in a tournament, it's all about going through and managing a tournament and being pragmatic. And you just said, Argentina showed us you can bomb out your first game. It's fine. And they're not the only team to ever lose their first game in a major tournament and win and end up winning it. So a lot of stock can be put into first games of tournaments when really they're the least important game of the tournament, usually. It's just a showpiece nature of this game. But if you take a look at the Copa America as a whole, really Canada's big goal is in the next 2 games. It is about Peru next, right? It is about what they can do against those countries.
Is it realistic?
The world champions of big measuring stick. It is pie in the sky with the squad the way they're playing right now, and let's face it, but stranger things have happened. I have seen teams in my history that looked terrible in the run up to a tournament, and people are like saying there's turmoil. It's hard because they have a fairly new coach in Jesse Marsh that is still trying to, I think, put his identity on the team. He's only been in charge for, what you would consider for tournament preparation like this, a very, very short time. What has it been, like a month and a half? The fact is he's, not really had the time to put his stamp on this team. And you look at what Canada has and where they're vulnerable. I think that this team has still got a lot of work. They were vulnerable to World Cup, especially at the fullback position. They were overrun at the World Cup by better teams on the wings. As much as we like to talk about how good Alistair Johnson is, and he's really come a long way with his career. Tajon Buchanan was playing in that, but playing more back than he will now for Canada at that World Cup. But they got torched a lot. They got torched a lot in that tournament. And if you looked at the technical stuff from FIFA after the tournament, where they kind of break down all the teams, FIFA does these technical reports, and it really talked about Canada's weakness on the outside on the fullback position, where they were getting beat a lot. So that's something they need to work on. That's still something I feel that they're not great at. It used to always be before that, in the years when we had struggled to even get close to qualification for a major tournament, Canada was always, they're actually pretty good defensively. They just can't score. But now it's the other way around. They do have the ability to score, but I think defensively is where there could be problems. And I think when you have the scope of players that Argentina has, and I think there's going to be some real X factors in that game if they start their top lineup. That's not just about Messi. Messi is the window dressing, and obviously he is the reason everyone's going to be, like, so many people and casual fans going to be watching. But I think the player that you really have to watch is Alexis McAllister, who plays at Liverpool, midfield player, and I loved him at the World Cup, and I think that he's just a player that really is kind of a glue guy for them. And I think in midfield, if he's dominating, it's a real problem. And I really liked how he's played for Liverpool this year. So, I think Alexis McAllister was one of the unsung heroes of the World Cup for Argentina, and I think he could be again, and he could be real problems for what is now a young Canadian midfield. Atiba Hutchinson's now gone and retired. He's gone to the broadcast side. It's going to be hard for that midfield to cope with what I think when Argentina has. They're going to be strong, they're going to be physical, and they're going to be dominant.
Everyone in a red jersey tonight is going to be up against Argentina. Before we go, listen, it's going to be a great moment for Canadian soccer just even to be on the stage. We hope that they'll perform well. But looking ahead to the rest of the tournament, I mean, let's be really optimistic and say that this team rises to the occasion. How significant would it be for Canadian soccer to find a way to advance out of the group stage at this early part of Jesse Marsh taking over the team?
It sets a marker for sure. It sets a marker. This team's back on the upswing. Let's face it. After qualifying for the World Cup, this team's the program in all facets has been on a downswing, and that includes the World Cup itself. It includes all the debacle around the association, the financial issues, the changing of officials at Canada Soccer. The difficulty they had in bringing in new people, all of that around the program, as well as some really flagging results. Now they had that draw against France, against a French team that it's hard for me to tell how interested they really were. A week out, or a week and a half out of the year, yeah. But it's hard. It's hard to grasp sometimes these friendlies. But this Copa America, I will say, is as a whole, there is like a lot of, the Argentina are the world champions, but I don't think they're as daunting as they were even a couple of years ago. As I said, they're aging. They're not as they have a lot of players who are going to be in their 30s on that roster playing tonight. And, some of the other traditional power teams in South America aren't as daunting as they used to be. And that's where I think that maybe there is a chance. What I'm saying is I think there's a chance. I mean, let's face it, Ronaldinho, what did he say? He's not going to support Brazil anymore because they're so boring to watch. It's like they've all got holes now. They don't have the same mystique. And I think there is a real, despite Argentina winning this World Cup, which was kind of a comeback, I think for the most part, we've seen this real separation now between the top European sides internationally and the top South American sides, where it used to be close. Yeah, Argentina kind of hung in there in this last World Cup, but the trend really is that we're starting to see separation. And I think there is a chance for Canada to kind of get some results and do something, but they've got to be at their best. They have to have players, and they have to have cohesion in their team, and that is something I don't see a lot of. Not since qualification. I didn't see it at the World Cup. I saw a lot of players out there being selfish. I see there's a lot of players out there who look like they're not necessarily playing for themselves, and I think this gets back down to some of the issues they've had with Canada soccer, the player strikes, and so much. I don't necessarily know how cohesive a unit they are. And Jesse Marsh is not a John Herman in a sense. He's not a rallier. He's not a raw, big, put it on the bulletin board speech guy. He's a pragmatist. He's an X's and O's guy. John Herman, we knew he could make a speech that could make you cry. But that's not what they've got anymore. And I think that this team needs to show some more get back to where they were at Azteca, where you felt that they were a family. They were a family out there playing. There wasn't a group of teammates.
Well, they'll have a great opportunity to show their progress on that tonight against the Argentines, and then on the 25th against Peru, and then later on in the tournament against Chile. We'll see when we've got more matches to talk about. Double S, enjoy the game tonight, and enjoy Friday night in Edmonton. I hear there's something else going on that it's grabbing a few people's attention as well.
I might be at some hockey arena somewhere watching some sort of game. I don't know. I hear it's important.
Thanks for doing this, pal. It should be a lot of fun. Appreciate you jumping on as always.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Thanks to my guy Double S for jumping on. 7 o'clock tonight, Canada, Argentina. Got the shirt on today. Let's go. What do the Voyagers say? Allez les Rouges. Let's go Reds. I'm not sure whether they'll be wearing red tonight or potentially white, but it's going to be neat. I'm pulling up Coolbet right now. I actually seen the number come down on Canada a little bit. Coolbet is doing a promo, by the way. So Canada was plus 1050. They're now plus 960. And a draw is plus 460. Argentina, heavy favorite, minus 312 to win on the three-way. If you do want to bet on Canada, click on the promotions tab at Coolbet. And if you put $25 on Canada to win, you will get a bonus where you get $5 for every goal scored in the game by both teams. So I'm not certain that Canada is going to be able to hang with the Argentines. But that's kind of a neat promo, so that even if Canada doesn't win, probably be getting the money back on some goals scored during the match. Other games in Copa tomorrow, Peru versus Chile. Those are the next two teams that Canada is going to be playing in the group stage. Chile, the favorite, plus 110. Peru, plus 325, and a draw, 205. By the way, while we're talking Euro, and I will get to the CFL lines in just a minute for Coolbet. Today, 2 draws so far. Slovenia, Serbia, 1-1. Denver. I always want to say Denver when I'm looking at it. Denmark, not Denver, against England was 1-1. And they're just into the second half of maybe the biggest matchup of the first round. Spain versus Italy. It is 0-0 right now. And I see some breaking news that the Lakers are hiring J.J. Redick, LeBron's podcast partner, as the new head coach of the Lakers. CFL, we got a game tonight. Montreal versus Ottawa. 2 undefeated teams. Alouettes are going to raise their Grey Cup banner. 6.5-point home favorites. Bombers are still 2-point favorites against BC, and minus 139 on the money line. Elks Argos in Toronto on Saturday. Argos 4.5-point favorites, and the Saskatchewan Roughriders at 2-0. favored to go 3-0, 2.5-point home favorites against the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who they just beat last week. I am on Ottawa tonight. I'm going to take Ottawa to keep it close, plus 6.5. I know Remis and Dusty are on the Owls at minus 6.5. So we kept that one out of our partner parlay. But if you do want the lock shop boosted one for the CFL this week, we've got BC plus 2.5. So let's hope the Bombers can win a squeaker by 1. Edmonton plus 4.5. And the Riders minus 2.5. That one is boosted up to plus 650 in the Coolbet exclusives. Other things you might want to check out at Coolbet right now. Live Golf Nashville this weekend. If you want to see Bryson DeChambeau again before the British Open, you can try and find a live broadcast somewhere. I'm not even sure it's still on Canadian TV. I have not seen it. You got CEBL, WNBA, and again, CFL games tonight. You're like in Montreal, eh? They really have been impressive, and they have been number one. I just kind of feel that Ottawa, after that big win, can go in and make a statement that they can hang with the big teams in the East, and I'm hoping for a close game tonight.
Montreal's got this really strong defense, so I'm going to ride with that. I know Drew Brown didn't have any turnovers last week, but they got the momentum. They're back home. I'm going Montreal, although Ottawa does seem to be improved over past years. But I
think you're in first place after 2 weeks.
We are. We're in the EST Pick'em contest. Me and you pick. I was really disappointed. Lieutenant Eric, not in the contest. I guess he's got issues figuring out how the math works on the spread. That's what Iwanek told me.
He came in and jumped in with me on the lock shop today to talk CFL and soccer. And yes, it was fun to pick his brain, but he isn't doing it. But yes, Remis is first place right now at 5-3.
Watch out for me.
I was 1-3. Dusty was 0-4 after week 1. Week 1's always the graveyard. We bounced back big time at 3-1 last week. So we've got it all. And I should mention to you, in addition to thanking Coolbet for all their support and reminding you that we're in Vegas next week, presented by Coolbet for draft shows beginning on Wednesday. Bomber fans, if you are betting on the CFL at Coolbet, make sure to take a screen cap of any bets you make over $10, or if you've got 2 $5 ones, that's fine. Put that together and email it into contest@winnipegsportstalk.com. We've already got a couple qualifiers. We will pick another qualifier at the end of the week. And each week until the August long weekend, and in week 2 or the second week of August, we will draw a winner. And that winner will win a trip for 2 on the Huss Bus with the 1930 Crew Tour. Transport from Winnipeg to Regina, 2 nights hotel, Labor Day Classic tickets for 2, some Coolbet swag, some swag from the tour itself, and guaranteed good times with yours truly. So, all you cool bettors out there, if you're betting CFL, screen cap those bets, send them in, and maybe you can get a marble in our special marble race to see who's coming to the Labor Day Classic. Good show today. More fun talking about the PLD trade, Cup Final, Bomber game tomorrow night, Canada versus Argentina. And we got some great sports over the next few days, Reem. Tonight is going to be real fun to see how Canada holds up against Messi and the world champs. And then tomorrow, the ultimate doubleheader. Bombers live, Game 6 of the Cup on the phone.
Yeah, we'll be watching that. I got to figure out what else they do Canada tonight. Maybe catch up on that Who Killed WCW documentary, Major League Baseball as well. There is a lot going on. Live Golf Nashville, right? We can watch that. Isn't that on somewhere? Isn't people watching that?
That'll start tomorrow. But no, I think it was originally on the Game Plus network. But the last time I tried to watch it, I turned it on and they were showing pickleball. So I'm not sure whether Liv got bounced for the Pro Pickleball Tour on the Game Plus network, but I like the Game Plus network. RP show's on it. Pat Mayo Experience is on it quite a bit. So anyways, we'll see it. But enjoy the game tonight. It's TSN. And for people asking, it's not on One Soccer. All these games are on TSN. Saturday night tonight. And I should give a shout out to my buddies, Alfie and Dre. They are chilling poolside right now, having a couple cold ones, getting ready to go watch Canada versus Messi. And, of course, Matty Alwanek from EST is there as well. So very jealous of that. But I'll tell you what, we'll be tuning in. I'm going to probably pop by for a few innings at the ball game tonight, then maybe head down to the King's Head with all the Voyageurs to see how we can fare in the big match tonight. Once again, thanks to all the sponsors that make this show happen every day, and a great group of guests, including Craig Button, Brandon Rewucki, Scott BIlleck, Steven Sandor, Remis killing it as always, getting us on and off the air. Thanks to you podcast listeners. Tell a friend about WST. And CFL fans, make sure, if you didn't see it yesterday, check out the podcast and give a view over on YouTube of CFL 110 with myself and Jeff Hamilton, with all the big stories around the Canadian Football League coming out of Week 2 into tonight's Week 3 kickoff. For Remo, I'm Huss. Have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow with a big Friday show. I think Mike McIntyre is going to make a second appearance and join us for a few minutes from Edmonton. Ken Wiebe will also be popping on the program. His colleague, I think Dustin Nielsen, is going to jump on the show, and also a special sit-down interview with Bomber legend Andrew Harris before he officially retires as a Bomber tomorrow night. And again, Harris is going to be signing autographs at the Princess Auto Tailgate Zone, 5:45 to 7 tomorrow night down at Princess Auto Stadium. Have a good one. We'll catch you tomorrow.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.